Hello everyone, welcome to Earth Archives. Today we're going to talk about a food that played an unimaginable role in World War II. Ice cream. Yes, you heard that right, the sweet treat that makes you smile just by eating it. But it wasn't just about cooling off. The role of food in wartime is never limited to sustaining the soldier's physical strength. More often, it's about boosting morale and maintaining the spirit. During World War II, ice cream wasn't just a comfort food for the American military. Its sweetness became part of the force that led to their victory. And what about fish and chips and Japanese curry? What roles did these play in the war? The history of ice cream, from the founding fathers of the United States to World War II military secrets. Ice cream had already made an appearance as early as the founding of the United States. It is said that one of the American founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, had a deep affection for ice cream. He even wrote down a recipe for ice cream made with vanilla, cream, sugar, and ice in his personal cookbook. This recipe later became one of the earliest American ice cream recipes. Jefferson's recipe also recorded the delicious ice cream he tasted during his travels in France and brought back to the United States, making it a regular on his own dining table. As the third president of the United States, Jefferson can almost be considered one of the founding fathers of ice cream culture in America. However, the story of ice cream did not stop with the founding fathers of the United States. With the arrival of the Industrial Revolution, the process of making ice cream became more efficient and mass-produced. In the beginning, ice cream was made by hand, requiring large amounts of ice and salt to lower the temperature, which was quite time-consuming and labor-intensive in those days. However, with the development of mechanization, ice cream began to enter the factory production stage and gradually became a common delicacy on family dinner tables. By the 20th century, ice cream's development ushered in its golden age. With advancements in refrigeration technology, ice cream's preservation and distribution became increasingly convenient, even leading to the appearance of ice cream trucks and street vendors. During this period, ice cream not only became the symbol of summer, but also an indispensable dessert for family gatherings and celebrations. However, you may not know that ice cream had a strong connection to military secrets during World War II. It is said that the U.S. military began sending ice cream to the front lines to boost the morale of soldiers. The U.S. government even developed a special ice cream machine that was easy to transport and store. These machines were capable of making ice cream under extreme conditions and transporting it to distant battlefields far from the rear. Ice cream became one of the few comforts for soldiers during the hardships of war and was thus regarded as a military dessert during World War II. The rise of ice cream during the Prohibition era. The Prohibition era in the United States, which lasted from 1920 to 1933, was a time when Congress banned the production and sale of alcoholic beverages. However, just when everyone thought the world of alcohol would go quiet, an unexpected hero emerged: ice cream. The arrival of the Prohibition law, while causing a decline in the business of bars and taverns, inadvertently paved the way for the rise of ice cream, which quickly became one of the comforting treats for the American people, and wrote its own brilliant chapter in the history of this unique period. Imagine, during the Prohibition era, when many people couldn't enjoy a drink at a bar, they could indulge in the cold and sweet goodness of ice cream from a street corner stall. During this time, ice cream was not only a refreshing remedy for the hot summer days, but also became a small happiness that people sought as an escape from reality. Bars transformed into ice cream shops, and some establishments that had previously served strong alcoholic drinks began selling all kinds of innovative ice cream flavors, ranging from strawberry and chocolate to vanilla. Every bite of ice cream seemed to carry a hint of rebellious spirit. The rise of ice cream was deeply intertwined with its historical context. Despite the prohibition on alcohol sales, some inventive individuals began to use ice cream as a substitute. Ice cream became not only a favorite of children, but also a source of joy and comfort for adults. Even more interesting, ice cream shops during this era often became social hubs where people gathered, whether to pass the time or to escape the constraints of the Prohibition. Ice cream became a part of social interaction. Many ice cream shop walls featured humorous slogans, allowing customers to enjoy delicious treats while having a laugh. Some innovative businesses even combined ice cream with another popular alcoholic taste of the time, creating alcohol-flavored ice cream. This ice cream usually included a bit of spice to mimic the flavors of alcoholic beverages, but without any actual alcohol content. This kind of ice cream not only offered a unique taste experience, but also subtly challenged the prohibition laws. The ice cream craze wasn't exclusive to the United States. Around the world, other countries began to embrace ice cream as a popular dessert. Under the shadow of prohibition, ice cream became a cultural symbol of freedom, rebellion, and happiness. Street vendors and homemade ice cream became a covert way of protesting the prohibition laws. World War II. Ice cream becomes a sweet weapon on the battlefield. The story begins with the American military. During World War II, the U.S. Army sought to boost the morale of its soldiers, providing them with small comforts and moments of relaxation during the intense battles and long marches. They brought ice cream to the front lines. Don't be fooled by the idea of ice cream as just a simple dessert. Behind it was a well-thought-out strategy. The U.S. military didn't just distribute ice cream as a daily food. They created specialized ice cream trucks. These mobile ice cream units followed the troops and stationed themselves behind the front lines to provide soldiers with a cool treat. This wasn't just a small gesture to lift the spirits of soldiers. The special role of ice cream reflected the importance of morale during wartime. Imagine the soldiers facing long hours of stress and danger, with every day filled with exhaustion. Then, out of nowhere, an officer appears with a cold scoop of ice cream. It wasn't just a sweet taste, it was a symbol of hope, a brief escape from their harsh reality, and a little piece of happiness in their ordinary lives. This moment not only brought warmth and relaxation, but also boosted their morale, making them braver and more determined for the battles ahead. On the Pacific Front, ice cream became one of the most desired supplies for U.S. soldiers. Due to the intense heat of the tropical climate, ice cream became a refreshing and sought-after food. The U.S. military even employed some innovative methods to ensure that ice cream could be delivered to the front lines. The ice cream trucks were equipped with refrigeration units and specially designed to maintain the frozen state of the ice cream under extreme weather conditions. This meant that even in the sweltering heat, soldiers could enjoy a refreshing treat at any time. This simple joy became an unforgettable memory for the soldiers, offering them a brief respite and a taste of happiness in the midst of war. However, the role of ice cream on the battlefield wasn't limited to the U.S. military. Other countries saw its special value and began to imitate this approach. During the hardships of war, ice cream proved to be a simple yet powerful weapon. It not only provided soldiers with the energy and comfort they needed, but also soothed their fatigue and anxiety, helping them cope with the emotional toll of war. Can ice cream engage in aerial combat? Have you ever imagined that ice cream could become a weapon in aerial combat? It may sound absurd, but the story behind it is more fascinating than any science fiction novel. Let's turn our attention to the mid-20th century, a time when the world was undergoing unprecedented changes. In this era full of adventure and innovation, ice cream actually became part of the daily routine for fighter pilots and even found itself strangely linked to aerial combat, one of the most challenging forms of battle. This all began during World War II. At the time, fighter pilots not only had to face fierce attacks from enemy forces, but also endured extreme tension and isolation at high altitudes. For these brave warriors piloting steel birds, each flight was a life or death battle, and long missions often meant hours spent in freezing cold and harsh winds. To help these pilots maintain their best performance in such extreme conditions, the military decided to give them an unexpected perk: ice cream. But this wasn't simply about enjoying a sweet treat. It was a creative form of aerial recognition. Pilots often had to patrol the skies for extended periods, sometimes staying in their planes for hours. These lengthy missions left many pilots feeling mentally and physically drained. One day, an innovative officer came up with an idea. Why not deliver the simple yet delightful treat of ice cream to these lonely pilots in the air? The military quickly began to prepare special ice cream machines and designed a delivery system capable of keeping ice cream frozen while flying. This way, pilots could enjoy a refreshing scoop of ice cream high above the ground, feeling a sense of warmth and comfort from home. This inventive proposal caused quite a stir in the military world. Many pilots reported that this ice cream service allowed them to temporarily forget the pressure of their tense missions and recharge. Ice cream became more than just an ordinary food. It turned into a mental pillar for the pilots during the hardships of war. The creativity even led to humorous situations, with some pilots joking, "If the enemy wants to attack us, just bring us some ice cream, and we promise we'll shoot them down." However, this wasn't the only battlefield for ice cream. In fact, its role didn't end there. As military technology advanced, ice cream gradually became a special comfort for soldiers in various countries. In extreme combat environments, the brief happiness ice cream provided became a mental refuge for soldiers, helping them keep a light heart even in the most difficult moments. The Navy Mooring Plan, the industrialized production of ice cream. Among the countless strategies and plans in naval operations and daily life, there's one that stands out due to its uniqueness and has been the subject of much admiration. The Navy Mooring Plan, the industrialized production of ice cream. This plan is not just about the production of a simple dessert, but also a creative application of military logistics, soldier morale, and industrial production. Whether viewed from a wartime perspective or a humanistic angle, it holds a special significance. The story takes us back to World War II, a time when the war was not only a military confrontation, but also a tremendous test of each country's logistics capabilities. Soldiers, enduring long periods of grueling combat, faced both physical and mental strain. For many soldiers, ice cream was undoubtedly a much-desired comfort. However, the challenge was how to provide this treat on the sea and on the battlefield, where conditions were harsh. Ice cream needed to be transported and stored at low temperatures, and it had to be produced quickly to meet high demand. This is where the Navy Mooring Plan came into play. The core goal of the plan was to establish an industrial system capable of efficiently manufacturing and delivering ice cream aboard naval vessels. At the time, Navy ships would often be at sea for extended periods, far from land. The long hours of combat and training left soldiers exhausted. Imagine, after enduring such difficult conditions, being handed a serving of ice cream. This sweet comfort would not only relieve fatigue, but also boost morale, motivating soldiers to continue their fight. The innovation of the Navy Mooring Plan lay in the fact that it wasn't just about fulfilling the desire for ice cream, but rather utilizing modern industrial production techniques to standardize the ice cream making process. They incorporated a significant amount of mechanical equipment to produce ice cream quickly and keep it frozen, ensuring that soldiers at sea could always enjoy this treat, even during long and difficult missions. This initiative undeniably brought a revolutionary change to the Navy of that time. Once implemented, the plan quickly transformed the lives of sailors. On the ships, specially designated ice cream production areas and refrigeration equipment ensured the quality and quantity of ice cream, always providing fresh desserts to the Navy. This not only lifted the soldiers' spirits, but also effectively alleviated the psychological pressure caused by prolonged sea operations, allowing the crew to maintain better physical and mental health. In fact, many historians believe that such seemingly small actions could subtly influence the outcome of a war, turning the tide at critical moments. With the success of the Navy Mooring Plan, this innovative model gradually became a reference for other military forces and logistics departments. Ice cream, this humble dessert, played an unexpectedly important role in the smoke of battle, becoming a symbol of warmth in the hearts of soldiers on the cold battlefield. The origin of fish and chips, from Dutch Jewish immigrants to Britain. On the streets of Britain, whether it's a chilly winter day or a sunny afternoon, a hot serving of fish and chips is sure to make mouths water, becoming a beloved classic in many people's hearts. However, this globally popular street food has a fascinating history. The delicious dish of fish and chips was not invented in Britain, but instead came from Dutch Jewish immigrants, undergoing a cultural collision that spanned time and space before becoming the British national dish we know today. The story begins with the Jewish community in the Netherlands in the 19th century. At that time, the Jewish community in the Netherlands had a long history of preparing fish dishes. Situated by the sea, the Netherlands had an abundance of fish resources, and Jewish dietary customs led them to coat fish in breadcrumbs or flour and fry it until golden and crispy. Not only was this a dish that satisfied the taste buds, but it was also nutritious, making it a common part of their daily meals. This small innovation laid the foundation for what would later become fish and chips. In the mid-19th century, a group of Dutch Jewish immigrants arrived in Britain, particularly in large cities like London and Manchester. These immigrants brought with them aspects of Dutch culinary culture, including their fried fish recipes. At that time, street food in Britain was mostly centered around meat, and fish was not a common choice. However, over time, these Jewish immigrants not only passed on the technique of frying fish to the locals, but also began to pair the fried fish with British-style chips fries, creating what we now know as fish and chips. Initially, this dish was not immediately embraced by the masses, as chips themselves were not a British invention but originated from France. Known as French fries, French cuisine had a place on British tables, but for many ordinary British families, the combination of fish and chips still seemed somewhat unfamiliar. As time went on, the dish gradually gained acceptance, especially in the East End of London, where the integration of the Jewish community and the working class helped to popularize fish and chips. The Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, the rise of fish and chips. In 19th century Britain, a revolutionary transformation was quietly unfolding that not only changed the face of a nation, but also profoundly impacted the eating habits of the British people. This transformation was the Industrial Revolution. As mechanized production replaced traditional manual labor, countless factories sprung up across cities, and the demand for labor skyrocketed. With the progress of industrialization, workers' eating habits began to change, and one of the most iconic street foods to emerge from this period was fish and chips. The rise of fish and chips serves as a microcosm of the social impact of the Industrial Revolution in Britain. Fish did not appear in isolation, but soon combined with another British staple, chips. Chips, which originated in France, were initially called French fries by the British. The pairing of these two foods did not happen overnight. Initially, it was a simple, inexpensive meal provided by a few street vendors during lunch hours for the working class. However, as industrialization accelerated, Britain's cities began to rapidly expand, and many working class and immigrant communities became loyal patrons of this food. With the development of railways, intercity travel became more convenient, and large numbers of workers entered the cities to work in factories. These workers, facing long hours of labor, needed a fast, convenient, and affordable food to fill their stomachs. Fish and chips became the ideal food, inexpensive, nutritious, and filling, making it the lunch of choice for workers. Street vendors and restaurants began to proliferate in London and other industrial cities, and the demand for fish and chips grew steadily. As society developed, fish and chips gradually expanded beyond the factories and working-class neighborhoods to a broader population, eventually becoming one of Britain's most iconic national foods. Especially during World War II, fish and chips became a source of comfort for the British people during difficult times. In days of food shortages, the simplicity and richness of fish and chips not only filled people's bellies, but also provided a form of solace, becoming an irreplaceable part of British society. 1960s, the explosive growth of fish and chips. In the 1960s, fish and chips in the UK reached its golden era, becoming a ubiquitous street food found on nearly every corner and firmly establishing itself in the hearts of the British people, regardless of their social class. It was a time of upheaval and transformation, and with the growth of the economy and changes in the social structure, this dish, introduced by Dutch Jewish immigrants, was no longer exclusive to the working class. It gradually became a cultural symbol of British society as a whole. The 1960s marked the early stages of economic prosperity in the UK. The post-World War II reconstruction accelerated industrialization, and as the economy boomed, urban populations grew rapidly. This made fish and chips the ideal food for the fast-paced urban lifestyle. It was not only affordable, but also quick to prepare, providing sufficient calories and nutrition. For busy office workers, fish and chips became a daily choice. For teenagers, it became the perfect snack after school. More importantly, fish and chips were no longer just food. They had become a representation of British culinary culture, embedded in social occasions. As the social structure evolved, traditional fish and chip shops began to modernize. During this period, these establishments transformed from simple street vendor stalls into more modernized fish and chips restaurants that offered cleaner, more contemporary dining environments. The decor in these restaurants became more refined and the service more attentive, but the mainstay remained the same, a steaming, aromatic portion of fish and chips. These restaurants attracted not only the working class, but also people from various social backgrounds, becoming popular spots for family gatherings and friends' meals. At the same time, with improved transportation, particularly the rise of automobiles, the reach of fish and chips shops expanded. Not only in major cities, but also in small towns and seaside resorts across Britain, fish and chip shops began to appear. This food not only satisfied the taste buds, but also brought emotional comfort. For many British people, fish and chips became a taste of home, providing a familiar sense of solace wherever they might be. In the 1960s, British culture was filled with diversity, and changes in music, fashion, and lifestyle drove the trends of the era, with fish and chips becoming part of this cultural wave. The rise of rock music and youth culture made fish and chip shops a popular gathering place for young people to socialize and date. At the time, fish and chips were not just a meal, but also a symbol of a way of life, representing British street culture. During World War II, fish and chips as a symbol of national spirit. During World War II, fish and chips became a symbol of national spirit in the UK. Whether in the cities or the countryside, the aroma of fish and chips wafted through every corner, quietly carrying a sense of comfort and hope. At the time, Britain was facing the threat of air raids, and daily life was filled with turmoil and uncertainty. Yet, this simple food became a staple of daily life, providing the people of Britain with a moment of solace amidst the war. Many fish and chip shops retained traditional methods, wrapping the golden, crispy fish and chips in paper to hand to customers. Despite shortages of supplies, many of these shops remained open, continuously serving the food their customers loved. When air raid sirens would sound, people would rush to the fish and chips shop to grab a quick and simple dinner. Even when fish was in short supply, alternative options were provided. This humble dish became a source of daily comfort for the people. During the war, the social structure in Britain underwent a significant shift, with many women entering factories and taking on other vital roles in the workforce. Fish and chip shops offered a simple solution, as the food didn't require complex cooking skills and could be prepared quickly, making it ideal for busy workers and families. The demand for fish and chips, a simple dish from the 19th century, surged during the war and provided psychological support for the British public in many ways. Wartime fish and chip shops even became social hubs for the community. People would gather here to momentarily forget the hardships of life, sharing light-hearted conversations away from the weight of the war. Fish and chips became an integral part of street life in Britain, whether in the bustling center of London or in the remote coastal towns. Even during the toughest of times, this simple food gave every Briton the strength of hope, reminding them that even in the face of immense difficulty, life could still be full of flavor and brightness. The connection between American soldiers and fish and chips. When American soldiers first set foot on British soil, they were not only greeted by unfamiliar customs and landscapes, but also by a food that played a unique role during the war: fish and chips. During World War II, the aroma of fish and chips filled the streets of Britain, becoming an indispensable part of daily life and, in an unexpected way, a part of the military operations. For those American soldiers coming from distant lands, this seemingly simple British dish became a comfort and a taste of home amidst the chaos of war. I recall a soldier named Tom, who had just arrived in England from the United States to participate in World War II. Along with his comrades, he walked through the British countryside, feeling the strangeness of the land. Despite carrying heavy weapons, there was a sense of helplessness and loneliness. One afternoon, as they passed by a seemingly ordinary fish and chip shop, Tom's comrade suggested, "Let's try this British fish and chips. I hear it's a local specialty." Tom hesitated, as he had never heard of such a dish, but in this unfamiliar place, he was eager to find something familiar. When Tom took his first bite of fish and chips, the golden, crispy exterior and tender fish surprised him. The aroma and taste were unlike anything he had ever experienced back in the United States. What comforted him even more was that this simple meal allowed him to momentarily forget the shadows of war, as though he was back home, sharing good times with family. Tom looked around at the other soldiers, and they, too, wore smiles that had been long absent. In that moment, fish and chips became more than just food. It became a symbol of Britain's resilience in the face of war, as well as a source of warmth and solace for American soldiers far from home. As the war continued, more and more American soldiers stopped by British fish and chip shops. Each time they enjoyed this traditional meal, they shared their stories with the locals, learning more about British daily life. Fish and chips, perhaps just a simple street food, carried an extraordinary power during that time. It symbolized resilience, hope, and people's anticipation of a better future. For the soldiers fighting in war-torn fields, this food not only filled their stomachs, but also provided them with a sense of comfort for the soul. After the war ended, these experiences became fond memories for many American soldiers. They returned home and shared the story of fish and chips with their families and friends, and this food from Britain found its way onto American tables. Fish and chips, more than just a meal, became a small but meaningful connection between the UK and the US during the war. Whenever Tom reflected on his days in England, he could still feel the warmth brought by the fish and chips, like the taste of home, forever in his heart as part of the history of the war. Post-war, the Cod War between the UK and Iceland. After World War II, as countries gradually restored peace, the political and economic landscapes of the world began to slowly transform. However, between the United Kingdom and Iceland, an intense dispute over maritime territory and cod fishing quietly unfolded. This dispute came to be known as the Cod War, and its emergence was not only due to competition over fishing resources, but also stemmed from differences in the recognition of international territorial boundaries and the increasingly tense diplomatic relations between the two nations. The origins of the story can be traced back to the late 1950s. Iceland, a country whose economy was heavily reliant on fishing, particularly cod, considered the fish not only a regular part of their diet, but also a key export product. However, as cod stocks began to decline, the Icelandic government decided to impose stricter control over its territorial waters. In 1958, Iceland announced that it would extend its fishing jurisdiction to 12 nautical miles, a significant increase beyond previous limits, and imposed restrictions on foreign fishing vessels, particularly those from the UK. This move immediately provoked a strong reaction from the United Kingdom. British fishermen had long been accustomed to large-scale cod fishing in the waters near Iceland, and they were taken aback by Iceland's new policy. The conflict quickly escalated, with the UK government asserting that Iceland's actions infringed upon their traditional fishing rights, and they decided to protest the new policy. However, the situation did not end there. Iceland was not content with the 12-mile zone and, in 1972, announced that it would extend its exclusive fishing zone to 200 nautical miles, exacerbating the conflict. British fishermen not only found themselves excluded from this newly defined area, but also faced a strong blockade from the Icelandic Navy. fishing boats were expelled and fishing rights were stripped away, which had a significant impact on British fisheries. In response to this challenge, the UK government intensified its confrontation with Iceland, and the dispute moved beyond diplomatic exchanges into intense maritime confrontations. The Icelandic Navy began forcefully expelling British fishing vessels from the area, even leading to clashes. The standoff between British fishing boats and Icelandic warships became a focal point of the conflict. As tensions escalated, the UK even deployed warships and aircraft to protect the interests of its fishermen and provide escorts. This direct military involvement further complicated the situation. Iceland, on the other hand, stepped up its efforts to target foreign fishing vessels and sought support in the international community. In the context of the Cold War, the dispute ultimately ended in a peace agreement. In 1976, both countries signed an agreement that established new fishing boundaries. British fishermen were gradually forced to withdraw from Iceland's 200-mile exclusive fishing zone, while Iceland secured the long-term stability of its fishing resources. The British origins of Japanese curry. Japanese curry, a dish that has become deeply ingrained in the hearts of many, did not purely originate in Japan. It has a history closely linked to the United Kingdom. This story dates back to the 19th century, during a time of turmoil in Japan as it opened its doors to the outside world. Western culture and technology began to enter this ancient land, and the influence of Britain, especially in terms of food, was particularly profound. It was these foreign influences that ultimately turned curry, an exotic dish, into a common feature on Japanese family tables. In the mid-19th century, as British trade ships began to dock at Japanese ports, interactions between the two countries increased. At that time, Japan was nearing the end of the Tokugawa shogunate, a period marked by social instability. The arrival of foreign powers began to reshape this isolated society. Among the goods brought by the British were elements of their culinary culture. Curry, a dish with Indian origins, entered Japan through British colonial trade. The British version of curry was different from the traditional Indian recipe. They would stew curry spices with meat and vegetables and serve it with rice. This version of curry, modified by the British, was milder and better suited to Western palates compared to the spicier Indian original. By the end of the 19th century, with the dawn of the Meiji era, Japan began to heavily import Western technology and culture, embarking on a path of modernization. British curry made its way onto Japanese tables and quickly became popular. In particular, it became a staple in the Japanese Navy, where curry was served regularly as part of their daily meals. The curry during this time was typically made with curry powder, meat, and vegetables, stewed together and served with rice, similar to the British version, but with a few distinct Japanese twists. The connection between the Japanese Navy and curry. The popularity of curry in the British Navy originated from Britain's colonial presence in India. The British modified Indian curry spices and cooking methods to suit their local tastes, incorporating it into the daily menu of the Navy. This dish not only provided sufficient calories, but also helped to combat malnutrition during long voyages. Therefore, when the Japanese Navy began to adopt the dining systems of Western military forces, British curry became one of the first dishes to be introduced. This process occurred during the late 19th century, during the Meiji era, as Japan was rapidly modernizing. As Japan's naval power grew, the importance of meals aboard military ships also increased. Curry, being convenient, widely liked, and nutritionally rich, quickly gained popularity in the Japanese Navy. According to historical records, the curry introduced by the British was not quite like the curry we see in Japanese restaurants or homes today. It was spicier and simpler in flavor. Over time, the dish was adjusted to suit Japanese tastes, becoming milder, smoother in texture, and increasingly paired with rice. By the 20th century, curry had become firmly entrenched in the Japanese Navy, particularly during long voyages and expeditions of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Curry not only served as a daily food for sailors, but also became an integral part of their spirit. Whether during the hardships of war or the routine of training and sailing, curry became an important comfort food for naval personnel. It is said that when the sailors enjoyed a hot serving of curry, they could feel a sense of warmth and strength from home, which also served as one of the motivating factors for enduring the difficult journeys. The evolution of Navy curry. The history of Japanese Navy curry is like a delicious cookbook, filled with tales of sea adventures and legends. The story begins in the late 19th century during the Meiji era, when Japan was rapidly modernizing. As the Japanese Navy began to learn from the West and cooperate militarily with Britain, the British Navy's dining system quietly influenced Japan. Among the most iconic foods to be introduced was curry. During long voyages, curry became an essential food for naval soldiers due to its rich nutrition and long shelf life. As Japan adopted Western military systems, this dish made its way onto the Japanese Navy's dining table. Initially, Japanese Navy curry was simpler than today's version. It had a more basic flavor, lacking the richness and smoothness that it would later develop. Instead, it had a spicier, more rudimentary taste. Over time, however, Japanese sailors began to adjust the curry to suit their own tastes. The foreign dish was then modified in Japanese kitchens, incorporating more locally favored ingredients such as potatoes, carrots, and onions. These ingredients not only enhanced the flavor of the curry, but also made it more appealing to Japanese appetites. Most importantly, curry began to be served with rice, a change that solidified curry rice as one of the sailors' favorite meals. By the 20th century, Japanese Navy curry gradually became more than just a dish served on military ships. It evolved into a symbol of spirit for the sailors. Whenever they felt tired or lonely during long naval cruises, a steaming bowl of curry rice would serve as a comforting force, motivating them to continue their journey. Curry not only provided the energy they needed, but also gave them a sense of home, no matter how far they were from their homeland. Post-World War II, curry rice becomes a daily staple. After World War II, Japan's society and economy underwent dramatic changes. Many believe that curry, the exotic dish that had come to Japan through Britain and its colonial ties to India, would fade away with the end of the war. However, that was not the case. On the contrary, curry rice, a simple yet magical dish, gradually transitioned from naval mess halls to become a staple of everyday home-cooked meals. It became deeply ingrained in the lives of the Japanese people, eventually merging with Japan's culture and eating habits over the following decades. Initially, curry rice was exclusive to the Japanese Navy. As Japan modernized its military, curry was introduced to naval menus as a major source of nutrition for sailors during long voyages. The dish, originally simple with rich, fragrant spices favored by the British, was paired with rice to meet the sailors' needs for both nutrition and energy. However, after the war ended, Japan's society did not immediately return to a state of peace. Instead, it faced the challenges of rebuilding. Amid this situation, curry rice quietly evolved into something more. With Japan's gradual economic recovery, especially during the U.S. occupation after the war, many Western cultures and foods made their way into Japan. The U.S. military's mess halls still included curry, and Japanese restaurants and households began to localize the dish. Unlike the coarser preparation in the Navy, Japanese housewives began to incorporate more local ingredients such as potatoes, carrots, and onions, adjusting the flavor of curry rice to make it more accessible and suitable for family tastes. This adjustment made curry rice not only meet basic nutritional needs, but also added layers of flavor that appealed to people of all ages. By the 1960s, with Japan's rapid societal development and the progression of urbanization, curry rice had moved beyond military and family tables to become a common choice in street stalls, restaurants, and fast food shops. After work, countless workers and office workers would walk into local curry shops to order a steaming bowl of curry rice, relaxing from their daily fatigue. Some families even began making it at home, turning it into not just a delicious dish, but also a time for family bonding. The birth of curry blocks, convenient and delicious. One of the most revolutionary inventions in the history of curry is the creation of curry blocks. This small change not only made curry more convenient to prepare, but also made it a beloved dish in countless households. The story dates back to the 1960s, a time when Japanese society was undergoing rapid development. As industrialization progressed, the pace of life in cities became faster, and people's working hours grew increasingly busy. In this context, the time available for home cooking became more limited. Traditional methods of making curry, such as cooking vegetables, stewing meat, adding spices, and manually preparing a rich curry sauce, began to seem cumbersome and time-consuming. Therefore, there was a pressing need for a faster and more convenient way to make curry. It was under such demand that a Japanese company began developing a simple and convenient curry cube. Their goal was clear: how to make the process of preparing curry simpler while maintaining its delicious taste. After numerous experiments and improvements, they successfully created the curry cube, a solid cube that dissolves in hot water within a short time, quickly forming a rich curry sauce. This innovation greatly simplified the process of making curry, making a dish that originally required a lot of time and effort much easier and more convenient to prepare. When curry blocks were first introduced, they immediately caused a sensation in the market. This was not only because they saved time and effort, but also because they retained the distinct, rich flavor and aroma of traditional curry. Additionally, they could be adjusted to suit different needs. Whether for meat lovers or vegetarians, people could choose from various flavors of curry blocks and quickly prepare a delicious bowl of curry rice. As curry blocks gained popularity, many brands began to innovate and compete by introducing curry blocks with different flavors and formulas, giving consumers more choices. This change not only promoted the development of curry blocks in Japan, but also helped them reach a global market. Today, whether in Japan or supermarkets worldwide, we can easily find a variety of curry blocks, which have become a staple in countless homes for cooking. Whether it's the American military's ice cream, Britain's fish and chips, or the Japanese Navy's curry, these dishes were not just food during wartime. They were also a source of mental support for soldiers during those tough times. Food, this seemingly ordinary thing, carries countless emotions and history in war, becoming a part of many soldiers' memories. That's it for today's video. If you're interested in the stories of wartime foods, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the little bell below so you won't miss any fascinating historical stories. See you in the next episode.